All right, welcome in to another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. Today we're talking about the first day of training camp. A lot of stuff to go over here. There was physicality, new scheme coming up, a fresh start possibility, and a reign of QB. Get in the chat, like and subscribe. Let's go. That intro song was brought to you by Ezera. Their new single Blind is out now, so go listen to them wherever you listen to your music. Boys, the physicality in that video, raising the cup, new season is upon us, the vibes are high. How are we doing today, boys?
Doing good. Shout out to my boy Shohei Ohtani. 50-50.
Seriously.
I think he finished today with 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, something ridiculous. Man, that guy's unreal. So yeah, I'm doing pretty good as a Dodger fan. How you doing, Joe? In Yankee land.
Looking forward to playoffs. Excited for postseason.
It all starts fresh, right? It all starts fresh when the playoffs start. Well, we have some people in the chat here. I'm doing good. Today was day off, so got a fresh cut, which I always like. Nice to get the beard trimmed and the hot towel and just kind of relax and everything like that. Went to the gym, moved some stuff into storage, did a little meal prep today. Got a lot of stuff done, getting some stuff for our fans going with the crossovers. So got another one booked. So I think we're up to 4 now for the crossovers there. So definitely doing a lot of things here for not only myself, but for our fans here at Hockey Royalty. So
love it.
Nice productive day. So what was also productive is the training camp starts today. We had a couple towards the end of our podcast last night. We talked about what we'd like to see or find out or learn from the podcast, or not the podcast, but the training camp. And we got quite a few things answered on day one. Obviously, people, as soon as new acquisitions are made with Fogle and Jeannot, they want to see where these guys fit in. And that's what we're going to start with. Training camp lines. So the lines were put out, obviously 2 lines in Group A, 2 lines in Group B, and then they scrimmaged each other based on where the lines were put at. You had Kopitar leading line 1, Jeannot leading line 2, Byfield, and then Akil Thomas. Were kind of the penciled in top 4 centers. And then after that, we had some stragglers there. The line that we talked about that we were most interested in seeing, we got to see. So let's start there, Russ. You were at training camp. The QB Fiala and Fogle line seem to be already clicking on a lot of cylinders, a lot of speed and toughness at all sides of the ice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything that we had heard or we've seen in the past from watching Warren Fogle on the Oilers or even going back to the Carolina Hurricanes, that was evident again today. Seems like he hasn't lost the steps. It's typical Warren Fogle that we expected coming into camp. You see him playing on a line with Quentin Byfield and Kevin Fiala. I mean, man, Kev looks like Kev was doing his thing out there with all the physicality going on. You can just always tell he's smiling out there on the ice, always having a good time. But with Quentin Byfield, I guess, I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm being hyperbolic, but dude, like Quentin Byfield looks just in the one scrimmage that I saw that was 30-minute sessions. Dude looks unreal. Like I saw a new level of Quentin Byfield, this new level of confidence now in his game where, yeah, a lot of the heightened physicality that we'll talk about was definitely at the forefront, but a lot of that was from Quentin Byfield. And I'm expecting some big things out of Q this year. And a lot of people, if you had your fantasy hockey drafts, I think Quentin Byfield is probably not going high enough because I'm expecting some good production out of him this year.
Made a pretty significant trade in one of my dynasty leagues for Quentin Byfield, actually, which ironically involved Tim Stützle, by the way. But anyways, yeah, no, that's awesome to hear. As we talked about yesterday, I forget what the question exactly was, Randon, and we talked about X factors a couple of weeks ago, and like I just keep going back to it's Quentin Byfield, guys. Like if he takes that next level, we could be a serious, we could be a team to be reckoned with. If he doesn't and he kind of plateaus, I think we'll be another kind of type of team. And so it's great to hear in day one. And, I know, like you said, you don't want to overreact. It's day one of training camp, but it's good to see that he's got that jump in his step, because I love the idea of that line. I think in a perfect world, we've talked about it before, just load up one line, just put QB with Fiala and Kempe, but understanding that that's not going to happen. I think Fogel is a fit. I think Fogel's a fit there. I think there's a lot of speed there. I like him. We're fans of him on this show, I know. So I think he can fit there. And I think that offer, that there's potential there. There's no question about it.
Russ, he's already a big guy, but like Holden talks about in the chat here, Byfield looks like he got a little bigger. I've seen multiple people say that he looks bigger in the lower half, which I don't know how you could tell that with hockey pants on, but he's already an imposing figure. Does he look like he's finally becoming a man and grown into his body in his young 20s?
I don't know if there's really necessarily a change in his physique, or maybe there was. Maybe he's gained 5 pounds, lost 5 pounds, whatever. But I mean, I think it's just more or less how he'll play the game using his body going forward. Because I mean, we've seen, even I remember when Quentin Byfield first came into the league, and I think there were some games in the playoff series against the Oilers a couple years ago where he maybe got pushed around a little bit, and people would want to see a little bit more sandpaper out of his game. I think they're going to be very pleasantly surprised by the Quentin Byfield that we'll see this year, and just based off of the first game or first scrimmage in practice, because it certainly feels like there's that confidence, that swagger to Quentin Byfield's game. And I think we talked about this last night, where we want to see this Quentin Byfield come in and be like, hey, this is my team now. And I think we saw a little bit of that glimpse in certain situations throughout scrimmage, where it's like he's getting maybe high stick. Like I think there was one instance where he got high sticked and kind of clipped a little bit from Arthur Kaliyev, and it was inadvertent, of course. We're not trying to hurt each other. I mean, there was that physicality that we'll talk about, but just kind of that glimpse of a high stick that hits Byfield. He turns around and just gives Kaliyev just this mean cross check, like, yo, dude, that's not gonna fly. And I'm thinking, like, hell yeah, I love that stuff. Like, give me more of that, Q. Show me that mean, nasty side to your game, because you got the skill, you got the speed, you got the smarts. If you add that sandpaper and that edge too, I mean, how many people are going to be pushing around a 6'5", 220-plus guy on the ice? Like, that's not going to happen. If he goes out there and tries to, like, lay people out, he can, because he's got the skill and he's got the speed, he's got the awareness to do it. So if that's added into his game, that's where I get so excited, because I know he can score goals. I know he can set up plays playing with Kopitar, Kempe, whoever he's playing with. But now that he's got this edge to this game that I saw a little bit today, that's exciting.
I think what I like about it is just, as a big guy, there should be really, when you watch Andrei Kopitar, and I know they kind of approach things differently, but when you watch Andrei Kopitar, you can't get the puck from that guy. He's just physically imposing in the way he protects the puck. He's impossible to knock off the puck. And you want to see Byfield like that. That when teams and defensemen try to, outmuscle him or get the better of him physically, that he's able to shrug that off and maintain possession. So, hey, fun to be bullish right now on Byfield.
He also had a nice little penalty shot there, showing off the skill set, which we all knew he had. But like everybody's saying, you would have a little bit of people saying, oh, we just need more physicality. And I think a lot of people confuse or don't differentiate physicality with fighting. And physicality and being gritty, and there are players like the Kachucks and Marchand or whatever, where they have a high level of skill, but they don't take crap on the ice. They're not afraid to give it. They're not afraid to face wash and get on people's nerves. And Byfield's a bigger guy. He's going to get on people's nerves in the corner. He's going to be able to impose himself physically and kind of draw some of the anger out of other hockey players, because he's going to be tough to play against. And that kind of physical nature, not being able to be pushed off the puck, being annoying to play against, being tough to play against, having to put your body up against the guy or get leaned up on for a solid 20, hopefully 22 minutes a night with QB. that's going to be something different. And that's the kind of physicality that we want to see out of a lot of our players.
Yeah, I mean, he's so good along the wall. I remember one play specifically, and it's like you mentioned, the penalty shot looked great. I mean, that's just our otherworldly skill that we saw from Byfield there. But the play that stood out to me the most, and it was just like, wow, is he had this puck, he had the puck along the wall. There's a guy right to the side of him, and he kind of made this little chip, and all in one motion, he jumped around the guy, lifted his stick, and then turned and started skating toward the net. And I was like, for a guy 6'5" to make that move for how big he is, like I'm sure we've seen it like on some occasions, but to see him now like do it more confidently, like that's the type of stuff I love seeing, because you can do the penalty shot moves and the skill stuff, but to move like that in such tight space with the puck for the size that he is, and to still like dish it off to make a play for someone else. I mean, that's the elite stuff I love watching.
So some other lines that are interesting that we got to is where are they going to put Laferriere, which we got that he's up with Kopitar and Kempe, and who's going to be fourth C? Well, it looks like first crack at that is going to be Akil Thomas on the line with Arthur Kaliyev, and we'll get to his storyline in a little bit, and Trevor Lewis. What do you guys think about Thomas kind of getting that first crack over Turcotte?
This is the only, and I think surprise is too heavy of a word. Like those first three lines, the top nine, that's kind of to be expected. No surprises there. Just how they work those last four forwards, and really last three forwards. Like I don't think Trevor Lewis is coming out of this lineup, so I think he's a staple. So it's just how does Kaliyev, Thomas, Turcotte, how do they work in, LW4, center 4, and like you said, Thomas gets the first crack. It's early. I suspect we'll see plenty of Turcotte getting opportunities. And we could see a situation where, Thomas and Turcotte are kind of rotating throughout the season, maybe in the early part of the season, in and out of the lineup. You could see a rotation of those three, Thomas, Turcotte, and Kaliyev. And I actually don't think that's a bad idea. I think it's a bad idea because it means Lewis plays every game. But in theory, just setting that aside, rotating those three, maybe keeping them fresh, right? I don't think that's terrible. I think the biggest thing for me is right now there's flexibility with this team. There's flexibility this season for them to be able to do that a little bit more. You've got guys that can play multiple positions, but guys that are skilled enough that can play throughout the lineup. Like Blake Lizotte, I love Blake Lizotte, but he's a fourth line center, like period, right? If something happens in the wing up the lineup, he's not going to really benefit you there, where Turcotte and Thomas are skilled enough to move up and move throughout the lineup. So there's a little bit more flexibility, which I think is obviously a really good thing. So I guess it's interesting, Randon, that maybe Thomas gets the first kind of quote unquote crack, but we're so early in the game that I'm, at least right now, not reading too much into what I think could conceivably be somewhat of a rotation anyways.
I think it kind of indicates, at least because I think the real surprise is that none of us really expected Arthur Kaliyev to be involved in the lineup, or even just part of training camp, but part of the Kings to start the year, and he is. And so, like, whether it's Alex Turcotte or Akil Thomas coming in, like shifting down, and it certainly seems like it's Alex Turcotte, you kind of look at where they have him positioned in center ice. So I wonder if maybe they're kind of indicating to us, like, hey, we want to kind of keep Alex Turcotte as the centerman, because you look at the center depth now for this team, and if Akil Thomas plays on the wing, or if Alex Turcotte plays on the wing, and that's where they want to have him play, there's really not too much else to work with. And I understand, like, it might be a little frustrating to see Alex Turcotte out of the lineup in lieu of like a player like Trevor Lewis. I get it. But if you want to have some center depth kind of to work with throughout the season, I don't think having Alex Turcotte start off playing, at least through training camp or even the preseason, start off playing in the center position with, like, I think today he was playing with Sammy Fagemo and Jeff Malott. If he's playing with those type of players throughout training camp, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world.
I think another interesting thing here, and again, it's early, is that Portillo was with Darcy Kemper on Group A, and Phoenix Copley, coming back from injury, which seems like he's 100%, was with Group B. And if you follow the way they did the forwards and the defensemen, that would mean that Portillo is third on the depth chart according to early lines here. Is that I wonder if that's a health thing? Like, I mean, it seems like Copley's 100% back. They're not going to risk injury with him playing a scrimmage if he's not. But is that a high trust out of what happened in playoffs? Is that a way to kind of, show that he's the number one goalie for the AHL team? And that's kind of how they did the depth chart. I just thought it was kind of interesting. Maybe nothing to read from it. And it's all just, X stuff to get excited about for the young kid. But for an organization that had zero goalie pipeline to have that much confidence in the young kid, just thought it was kind of interesting. Maybe
I agree. I mean, it's just really glad to see Phoenix Copley back on the ice. I mean, we didn't know. I think a lot of us maybe assumed that he would be back just based off of the guy that he is. And just, sure enough, I mean, I asked Jim Hiller about Phoenix Copley today, and he said, yeah, I mean, he came back 100%, the typical Phoenix Copley that he is, probably ahead of the curve or ahead of where they thought he would be at this point after his injury last year. And then he said that he tested among the highest in all the strength tests too. So it's like, not surprised at all. But as far as like
the typical best shape of your life training camp,
yeah, exactly, that kind of stuff. But I mean, I don't know if it's really indication in terms of like having Portillo start there with Group A. I think that's just more or less there's 4 goalies that they're probably going to have. Obviously, 2 for Ontario and 2 for the Kings. So I'm sure they're just kind of rotating throughout training camp.
The last one I thought that was interesting here was the pairings. Where were they going to bump Clark up to the second pairing with Gavrikov, or were they going to keep it with Jordan Spence? They chose to keep it with Jordan Spence. So Spence was with Gavrikov and Brant Clark was with Joel Edmondson. Seems like that's what we're going to get to start the season. Russ, what did you see from those pairs in general?
I actually was paying attention a lot to Edmondson and Clark to see how they kind of work together. And it was pretty funny watching Clark kind of give instruction to Edmondson as the play is going on about like where to be and pointing out to him, and typical Brant Clark kind of fashion, right? He's got so much confidence on the ice. He doesn't care who he's talking to. He's going to tell you like where you need to be. And I saw a lot of that from Brant Clark today. Did see a lot of those kind of Edmondson, Englund kind of flubs where it's like the puck's on a stick and it's like, oh crap, what do I do now? So I wonder how much that's going to kind of maybe hurt Brant Clark in a lot of the plays that he wants to do. But if Brant Clark's jumping up into the rush, I think today he even had a breakaway himself. If he's jumping up into the rush, trying to join like the forwards or whatnot, and Joel Edmondson's just kind of hanging back and watching the play happen in front of him, I'm not going to be upset about it.
Yeah, no real surprises. I mean, I think we had that question of where could Clark, slot, Randon, but in general, I think this is to be expected. It is what it is. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a grand, opinion on it. I think these are as soon as they made the Edmondson signing, this is the exact pairings that I figured we would see. So just we'll see as the season goes, right? Edmondson is a guy that has struggled with injury for a while in his career. I wonder, will we see if we see, because I don't know who that extra defenseman is. If they keep 7, is it going to be Englund or is it going to be Burrows, or my nightmare scenario that Russ pointed out to me before, where they keep both of them? Because to me, I think if they keep both of them, we're going to see Clark healthy scratched and or Spence healthy scratched. That is a locked on guarantee, because there's no reason to keep 8 defensemen if you're not going to have some sort of rotation. You're not rotating out your big contract guys. If they keep 8 defensemen, you're going to see Clark and Spence sit throughout the season.
That's my nightmare.
I don't even want to talk anymore. Somebody take it over, because I've just got really upset. So that's
Joe's nightmare might be the defensive pairs. My nightmare is losing on a parlay on the last minute. And you can bet on a parlay here at DraftKings Sportsbook. TD, Tutty, taking it to the house, whatever you want to call a touchdown. They matter more here at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Ready to place your first NFL bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown, or you can look at the odds for your local LA teams. The 49ers are coming to town to play the LA Rams here on Sunday. Right now, the Niners are favored by 6.5 points. Odds are subject to change. Over-unders at 43.5. Both teams are banged up. Can the Rams cover the spread? Why don't you bet it on DraftKings? Ready to score a touchdown dance of your own and score big on DraftKings with the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY. That's 8778-HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill and Casino and Resort. 21 age and eligibility restrictions varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional term and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offers only for new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
One more thing on the Brian Clark, Jordan Spence situation. I actually asked Hiller about maybe some power play alignment that we might see. And I asked him specifically about, now that you have Drew Doughty, Brian Clark, and Jordan Spence all presumably in the lineup together, like, are we going to see all three of them on the power play unit? And he kind of gave like not like a direct answer, but kind of like a nonchalant answer about like, oh, we're kind of thinking of everything. But he said like one of the main things that they're talking about is having all three involved on the power play when they're in the lineup. So at least that's something that they're thinking about, and they definitely are aware of for sure.
Yeah, good.
Some creativity, possibly, huh? All right, all right. It only took 3 years. Let's get into the next line, which is we talked about it briefly, but there was more sentiment of this throughout the entire lineup. Is the physicality and just kind of like the chirpiness of the practice, the aura that was on the ice. Russ, can you speak about it? You wrote about it in your article. If you haven't read the article, go to hockeyroyalty.com right after this and get the full rundown. But Russ, what was the aura like on the ice? Like, how was it chippy between all the lineups? And it wasn't different than what you've normally felt in previous training camps.
I mean, I've been to these training camps. I think it's only like my third or fourth year covering the team. I've been to these training camps. This is by far the most physical scrimmage I've ever watched. And Drew Doughty echoed that same sentiment. Mikey Anderson said the same thing. Everybody kind of – physicality was the key word throughout practice, not even in the scrimmage, just throughout every drill that they ran. I mean, and it's funny because when I talked to Alex Ferrier and I asked him the question if that was like a message from the coaching staff to be like, hey, like this is a scrimmage, but we want to see like heightened physicality throughout it. And he said, no, that was just really players that just kind of got into this groove of like, oh, this scrimmage is being taken to a whole another level. Let's kick it up a notch. And I think Doughty had mentioned about players like the newcomers, like Joel Edmondson, Warren Fogle, Tanner Jeannot. You add those type of players into any type of hockey environment, physicality is going to get ramped up. But when we talked to Philip Deneau, he mentioned Quentin Byfield being the player that kind of kicked things off a little bit. And just to kind of go back to Byfield, I was talking about him earlier, there was one play where Riley Walsh had the puck like facing the corner boards. He turns around with the puck, and Quentin Byfield is just barreling toward him. And I'm thinking, like, there's no way he's going to just lay him out right here. And sure enough, just like, bam, like Walsh just dropped like a sack of potatoes. And I'm like, holy hell, like, this is a scrimmage, guys. Like, relax. But then you just see, like, it just kept going on and on and on. Like, Mikey Anderson and Byfield were, like, battling in front of that, giving each other healthy cross checks. Joel Edmondson, of course, was getting involved. There was one play. I think it was like one of the first plays that I actually really noticed the physicality. Sammy Fagimo had the puck along the half wall, kind of near the blue line, and he's kind of like, I don't want to say he's kind of like nonchalant with the puck, but he's like looking to make the play, but maybe probably not going like full speed. He's probably turning around thinking like, oh, scrimmage, whatever. Let's kind of get this thing started. Joel Edmondson just comes in and just totally like lays him out along the boards. It's the funniest thing happened. I see Samuel Fagimo kind of turn around and give this like, what the fuck was that? Like, that's so funny. So that kind of initiated everything, I felt like. And it was just, I feel like it's so refreshing to see because, yeah, like we talk about like on this podcast, of course, like when you add players like Edmondson and maybe even Jeannot, it's like, that's maybe not the right kind of fit for what the Kings need now, especially when you're kind of looking for scoring. But when you see these type of scrimmages where these players are really taking it really serious and really kind of elevating the game to a new level. That's what I love to see. And it really came to the forefront when I saw Tanner Jeannot and Warren Fogle battling in the corner, and all of a sudden they're like chirping at each other back and forth. I'm like, oh crap, are they going to drop him right here? And Quentin Byfield has to step in and be like, hey guys, relax. Like, I know things are kind of getting a little physical here, but we're still on the same team. So I love seeing that stuff. That's the key. That's especially in day one, right? Like, you want to see these guys not come out here and be like, okay, let's run through these drills, kind of get training camp started. You want to see them come out and be like, okay, like, this is when the season starts. We need to really establish what this team wants to be. And I think we saw that on day one today.
Yeah, you want to see that, like, this intensity, right? You want to see the guys that are trying to make a name for themselves, or guys that are trying to make a first impression, guys that are trying to keep a spot or win a spot, whatever it is. You want that intensity. So if there's opportunity to finish a check, you're going to finish your check. And I think that's awesome. I think that you always want to try to have that. It's a matter of, finding the right players to do that, guys that are capable of doing multiple things. And I think you mentioned what we like on our show. And I think that's where we get hung up on some of the guys, but regardless of that, like, it is very good to see a team that is engaged, a team that is intense, and a team that is obviously clearly has a fire under them. It's day one, right? So, you take that. I'm sure a lot of this is just excitement of everybody getting back in the swing of things. So that's great. But I mean, it's better than the alternative. I'm not going to go too crazy about it. It's good to see. I think as a coach, Hiller's got to be pumped right now to have that type of a first day, and then it's just about carrying it over. And then as the roster gets trimmed, as you go through camp, it's about keeping that, right? And then as you get into the season, it's about maintaining that. And then, seeing where, how things flow from there and where your strengths and weaknesses are. But this is a really good start from an intensity standpoint.
That's funny because real quick, Brandon, Rob Blake. So they have this little, I call it like a perch, where there's this office in the corner above the ring. And that's where Rob Blake kind of sits to watch things, like the practices go on. And I'm sitting kind of looking up at him, and I see all that stuff happen, all the physicality. You see Joel Edmondson doing his thing, and then Warren Fogle and Tanner Jeannot going at it with each other. And I just kind of look up, and I can't really see Rob Blake's facial expression, but I can just imagine him having this smirk on his face, knowing, hey, this is the team I wanted to put together. And I'm not going to sit here and say he did a great job, because we still have our questions about the roster and the lineup, how it's going to look on ice.
We're at game -5 right now.
Yeah, but I have to say, that's I'm sure that's what he kind of envisioned, is to have this kind of team to show that, hey, we're not going to get pushed around anymore. We might we're not going to probably outscore you 6-2 or whatnot, but we're going to play a really hard, physical game. And I'm sure Rob Blake loves seeing that.
Yeah, they'll lose to Edmonton in the first round. It's just McDavid will have a couple extra bruises, is all.
Exactly.
Your pessimism is already at peak mid-season form there.
Listen, here's the thing. I don't mean that. I say that flippantly. You're not going to get me to do jumping jacks over this physicality stuff. It's great to see. Again, if I'm putting my coaching hat on, and if I'm on the ice, right, or I'm running, or I'm watching from the stands, or whatever I'm doing, and this is my team, and I'm seeing this type of intensity, I'm fired up. Don't get me wrong, okay? But I don't have my coaching hat on. I kind of have I'm trying to be an analyst, for lack of a better term, right? So I'm pumping the brakes on doing jumping jacks and cartwheels and how excited everybody is. It's a good thing, but as Randon mentioned, it's game -5, and how good is it going to be if you're 15 games into the season and you're 3-9-2? Again,
I'll take the positive. I'm gonna counter you there, and I think you said the positive is good because the atmosphere is great. And yes. I like teams, and I like winning teams. Try to get the best out of themselves. They don't need a coach to get the best out of them. They show up, they police themselves, they police their own practices. They do all those types of things. You look at it, and everybody knows I'm a Niners fan, and we haven't won the championship, but we're a winning organization, and you see it every single training camp. Shavarius Ward wants to be on the number 1 wide receiver every single snap. The best wants to sharpen the best. Trent Williams wants to go against Nick Bosa. They want that challenge in practice because they want to bring that into that game atmosphere. And so the fact that it was this chippy early on, the physicality, hey, come, let's bring it. We're all bringing it as a team. We're all dragging each other together. We got one common goal. It kind of seems like it might be that kind of vibe where the atmosphere and the morale in the locker room might be already different than it was in previous seasons. And I think that is something to hang your hat on. Not maybe the players that we signed and what they do on the ice, but the vibe that's in the locker room. And maybe the team is kind of changing and is an amalgamation that is a little bit different than what we've seen in years past.
And I got no problem, by the way, if Fogle and Jeannot ended up dropping the gloves.
No, yeah,
I think that's great.
I was hoping it would happen.
Yeah, like I think that stuff is it's fine, it's healthy, it's great. I got no problem with that stuff.
I mean, we see fights in NFL training camps all the time. Like that's like a thing. Like coaches encourage that.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is all of this doesn't equal goodness.
Points.
Right? Doesn't equal point. It doesn't equal results. It's good to see. I like it. File it away, and we move on to day 2. But like, you just keep that in the back of the mind. Like a John Tortorella team, in Columbus or Philly is going to work their balls off, but they didn't win a lot of games either. So just not to say that it's the same thing, but like I think where you guys are going with it though, and I will agree is was Phil Deneau, I believe, talked about at the end of last season that, and he may not have even been the only one, that there were guys that just was like, what was the phrase he used? I don't know if it was like the compete level, like wasn't there. It just there wasn't.
Something like that. I remember after this. Yeah, I remember what we were talking about.
So to have this day 1 be like that, okay, it's more for me. I guess it's more of like I'm not going to get too excited about it. It's more of like a sigh of relief. It's like okay, these guys are there. There's a little pep here. It's not like a carryover of same old into the next season again and woe is me because we lost for the 3rd straight year. No, there's a fire, there's an intensity. So that is encouraging.
Yeah, I'm with Brandon too. Like this whole like the whole environment, it just felt like this is like a whole nother level that you're trying to reach. And like what Brandon said, like I'm so happy that it wasn't the coaching staff that tried to instill this be like this physicality in the scrimmage. It was the players that brought that to that level. And that's stuff you love to hear because it's almost like an iron sharpens iron kind of thing. Like, okay, like, hey, we're not going to get there unless you guys help us out as well. And to see that kind of meanness between your own teammates before the season actually starts, that's definitely a good sign.
What's going to be a good sign for fans is our next topic here. Bye-bye 131. I know all the fans have been clamoring for this to be gone for a long period of time. I think a lot of fans don't like it because it seems passive. So the physicality was there. They're changing the system to perhaps a more aggressive system. The players are asked about it, and we talked about it before we got on the spot. It just seemed like Kopitar was like, thank God I don't have to answer any more questions about this. No, we're not doing the 131. Can we move on? But I think it's going to be nice to – I think the best thing about this is, it seems like an identity change for the team with the physicality. Seems like they might be more aggressive on the puck. But it's also like not a blame. I think we're all the fans and, we're blaming the system 131. No, like the players just got to play better. Right. And now they're playing a completely different system. It's going to be all onto the players to implement the new system and be the players that we know they can be. And there's no blame on being, we're going to be defensive minded 131. We're going to sit back. No, like the environment's different. The scheme is different. Now it's on to the players to make plays. And that's what, we want. We see Free Campe down here in the chat. We want let Kev be Kev. We want the Clark train at, flying at 100 miles an hour. I think this is just another implement that this might happen this year, and the identity of the team might be changing.
Yeah, I mean, my whole criticism about the 131 that the Kings played was you are really hindering the ability of a lot of the forwards that you have in the lineup. Kevin Fiala, Adrian Kempe, now Quentin Byfield. Like, these are all players who skate really well, extremely well. Some of the best skaters in the NHL. And when you play this 1-3-1 style, and Adrian Kempe mentioned this specifically, it's like he talks about it, as a right winger, he has to stop and kind of start and go back, and he can't join the rush as much because he's trying to help out his defender and try to help him break out of his own defensive zone. Now that you have this, and it was funny because we asked Jim Hiller about it, and he was so funny giving his answer because I guess they had, or he may have been joking, but I guess they had some kind of running bet of which reporter was going to be the first one to ask the question. I didn't ask it. It was Eric Stevens, so he's the one who won the bet apparently. But when we asked about it, he talked about like the main reason why they're kind of transitioning away from the 1-3-1 to this now 1-2-2 style is because they think that one of the best traits that they have in the lineup is their skating ability. And like, I'm sitting there thinking like, yeah, that awesome, great. But it's like, why wasn't this implemented before? Like, where did this now all of a sudden you realize like now we got to try to highlight the strengths of this team. So I think it'll be great for players like Fiala and Kempe, who are now going to maybe get a little bit more free flowing style into their game, which I think will definitely highlight their best attributes. But I'm a little concerned about how this will affect now some of the defensive players that you have, especially on the left side, and what this will do to the goaltending, because a lot of the strengths that the Kings had last year, at least in net, was because of the 1-3-1 system, and it kind of limited the offensive ability or threats from the opponents that they played against. And I know that, Joe, that was something that you talked about on end if the Kings ended up transitioning away from the 1-3-1.
Yeah. And the only thing that I'm going to say is like a little frustrating about all of this is like, for all of my complaining about Joel Edmondson and how bad the contract is, he is built in a lab for the LA Kings 1-3-1, right? Like it revitalized, I would argue, Vladislav Gavrikov's career, got him a healthy contract. The way he was another one fit perfect into this system. And I gripe about the Edmondson because I think he's severely limited in what he can bring to the team when the puck is near him. But I kind of figure he'd been perfect, right? As that lefty, strong on his, defending his blue line, stepping up at the neutral zone blue line, being really difficult to get past with his length and his physical presence. Like, I fully expect like that was going to be his role, and he probably would have been fine at it. Alex Edler was great in the 1-3-1, doing what he needed to do.
Happy retirement, by the way, Mr. Edler.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Stick taps. Hell of a career. Like, he didn't have to worry about skating as much as that defenseman, right? Well, now you're going to ask Gavrikov to skate more. You're going to ask Joel Edmondson to skate a little bit more. I think that is going to put a little bit more pressure on them that in what they're less good at. So it's as if this seems a little backwards. Like, if you knew you were going to do this, once again, why are you signing a player like Joel Edmondson, who this isn't necessarily his strength would have been? You tell me, hey, we're playing the 1-3-1, so Joel Edmondson's a perfect fit. As much as it sucks, yeah, he kind of is. But now you're going to go away from it as you sign this guy who just, I don't know. I'm even more skeptical about what he can bring, because I think it makes it that much more difficult on Brandt Clark. Like, at least last year, when you look at Spence in England, like, Spence was the retrieval guy as the right D almost, exclusively. So at least he knew his role. He knew he was going to go back. He's probably going to get hit. So maybe from a physical standpoint, it's not going to be as hard on Clark. But now you may have Joel Edmondson going back and retrieving pucks instead of Brandt Clark. That puck's not getting out of the zone as efficiently. So I do worry about that. Like, I wonder if they're going to be able to how that's going to help the transition game or affect the transition game, I should say. Yeah. We'll see, but
Hiller didn't really want to dive into specifics, obviously, of his own team strategy, but he did mention about how it might affect the breakouts. And I wanted to ask you, Joe, because I agree with you. Like, we talked about this on end. It almost seems like they're even drafting players to play specifically for the 1-3-1. And I feel like this is a bigger change than we're all kind of making it out to be, because we talked about, like, you look at some of the draft picks, you look at the signings that you just mentioned. It's all been based specifically, it seems like, off the 1-3-1, and now all of a sudden you're totally changing everything. But I wonder, like, how much this change is being kind of brought out because of Bryant Clark. And because you kind of look at the right side, like you talked about, like the right side defenseman is going to be the one that's going to have to go back and retrieve the puck. And they're not usually involved in the rush and trying to drive play up ice. I wonder if this is the coaching staff realizing, like, hey, we have this total unicorn in Bryant Clark. We can't have him going back and retrieving pucks behind his own net. He needs to be the one like stepping up and joining the rush and dictating play up ice, and let Edmondson be the one doing that. So I wonder, do you think that's maybe the reasoning behind this switch?
I think there's logic to what you're saying there, because and really, if there's a flaw, like, not to say that Clark is flawless, but one of the flaws in Clark's game, I would argue, is his going back and puck retrieval.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I don't think that's a crazy thought. I think it's probably a perfect storm of all the complaining about the 1-3-1 and the fact that it kind of didn't work, despite, I don't know why everybody thinks it worked, but it really didn't work. So now you have this guy in Clark and Spence really too, right? Yeah. So it's like, maybe we don't want them to get absolutely murdered on retrievals all the time, and maybe we tweak it. Again, my only question to that is, why would you get a guy like an Edmondson then? Because I would think this, like, if you're Bryant Clark or if you're Jordan Spence, like, wouldn't you want a player who, because it may not be you going back to retrieve the puck, say the puck's dumped in and Joel Edmondson's got to go back and get it, and maybe Bryant Clark is either going to be, depending on the forecheck, he may drop off and be a D-to-D option, whatever the case may be. Wouldn't you rather have a defenseman who is much more comfortable with the puck, making that first pass and getting it up to you, rather than a guy in Edmondson who I'm just skeptical that he can do that, where he's going to probably do more of, I'm going to put my head down, maybe absorb a check and wrap the puck around the wall. That's not great. So I don't know, like, that's what I want to see, kind of to where you're going here, is like, how does this affect the breakouts? Because I don't know that the Kings were great at breakouts all the time in the past. We've talked about that. And I don't know that this necessarily helps it. It just depends. I'm intrigued to see how a player like Edmondson and how a player like Gavrikov adapt to this, and maybe to a lesser extent Mikey Anderson. Like, I think Mikey Anderson is much more capable from a skating standpoint than the other two, and he's shown to be a little bit better. He's shown a willingness to kind of move up into the play at times offensively when need be, but he's kind of played his entire NHL career in this 1-3-1 system. So this is an adjustment, right, for Mikey Anderson, and his role has been, I remember, I think it was the first playoff against Edmonton. Dmitry Filipovich over at the PDO cast was doing some tracking, and he was like blown away at how good Mikey Anderson was. Yeah. Obviously aided in part by the good in defending the zone, right? The zone entries, his zone entry defense was phenomenal. And that's kind of by design, right? With that lefty, it should be, because it should be. Now you wonder how some of that stuff plays. So there's going to be a difference. There's going to be a difference on when the opponents have the puck entering the blue line, entering the zone, and there's going to be a difference on retrievals, and that by just default is going to affect the breakout. And the question I've always had and will continue to have is, do they have the appropriate guys to make the plays? I mean, because I think you can't just have one guy that's defenseman on the ice that can make a play, because you kind of need both, right? Mm-hmm. And I think Mikey can do it. Skeptical of Gavrikov and skeptical of Edmondson. So it doesn't really matter if you have an offensive guy on the right. You can have a defensive guy on the left. That's perfectly fine, as long as that defensive guy can be capable with the puck. That's where my concern is, right? So we'll see.
Bell brings up an interesting point here. I wonder if they let Gabby walk to get a more mobile LD2. I wonder if maybe not let him walk at the end of the season, but for this season, I wonder if he's more ample to be traded at the deadline to find somebody that kind of fits their system differently.
Only if they're out of it. He's not going. I'd be shocked if they dealt him, I think. But we've talked about this in the past. It was probably Russ, because he always gives me nightmare fuel. But I think Gabby could walk, and I think Edmondson can be LD2 next year, because remember, he signed to a 4-year deal, and a 4 by 3.8. I don't know, like it's not expensive, but it's kind of high for a third pair defenseman, which should be like $1 million, $2 million. They gave a lot of term and money to this guy, so I'm not going to be shocked here if Gavrikov, if they do let him walk, and Edmondson slides up, and then they do what they should have done and get a cheap guy that can skate, can be defensive, but skate and move pucks as your LD3 at a cheap bargain price. Obviously, it makes the top 4 that much weaker if Edmonton slides up, but that's where I kind of think they could go. I don't know, Bell, to answer your question, that they're going to go and get a more mobile LD2 for next year. I'll believe that when I see it. This team has never done that. Now, so because this they didn't decide to make this change today, right? So they've known about this change in system, I would suspect, for weeks, if not months. So I don't think that this is a big surprise. So I don't think they're just going to flip a switch and all of a sudden say, oh, now we're going to go get a mobile LD2. I'll dream right there with you, Bell. I don't know.
I mean, it's definitely interesting though, because I mean, let's just play hypothetical. Let's say they do want to move Gavrikov. I mean, that clears a ton of money off your books. You have Edmondson, who maybe is like a Gavrikov light. I wouldn't say. I think their skill set is probably very similar. Edmondson's probably more physical of a player, but then you still have players like Kyle Burrows on the roster. You have Caleb Jones there, Andreas Englund. We're not going to get overly excited about those kind of players, but it's like, I mean, the dip isn't that drastic, right? But I still think it'd be really surprising if something like that happened. But just kind of if they don't re-sign Gavrikov, which I don't think they should, in my opinion. I don't think he's going to be worth what the money he's probably going to get on the free open market. I think you can probably utilize that money to maybe upgrade or find a cheaper version that with a little bit more mobile. I mean, if they played Caleb Jones a handful of games this year, we might see a better version of the defense. You never know.
Yep.
So
what I do know is that Joe's going to need some therapy, and he's going to get all his therapy here at Betterhelp. So Betterhelp is our new sponsor here at Hockey Royalty. This podcast is sponsored by Betterhelp. Are you wanting to try to learn a new skill? You want to try to better yourself for the upcoming year. I know I'm trying to maybe learn a new language, or where do I fit that time in? How do I kind of gauge where my life is at in order to get those experiences? Well, BetterHelp can help you, empower you to learn and set new skills and boundaries in order to bring that new addition into your life. So if you're thinking about giving therapy a try, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, or even switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Discover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN to get 10% off your first month. That's right. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. Last thing we got here is who probably needed some of that BetterHelp this summer with everything going on with his contract and where he was going to play is Arthur Kaliyev. The team and himself said that it's going to be a fresh start this year. I don't know if that's coach speak. I don't know if that's how he actually is going about that. But last night, we talked about the mindset of Arthur Kaliyev. What is that going to be? How is the team going to treat him? And right now, it looks like he's starting on the fourth line. He seemed to be in good spirits in his interview. I don't know how he looked on the ice, and Russ, you could talk about that here in a second. But ultimately, he's the wild card, and I don't know how much a fourth line player is really going to affect this team. But he could affect the team on the power play, and getting an extra 14, 15 goals from a fourth liner, power play specialist, definitely could help with putting points on the board. Russ, what was his kind of demeanor? How was kind of the vibe with him? And then what did you see on the ice from him in day one?
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking to him, it certainly seems like he's ready to kind of move on from everything that happened at the end of last year and throughout summer. I know the photo I shared wasn't him glowingly smiling, but he gave a few smiles here and there. So, he's always been well liked amongst his teammates. It's never been like a locker room issue. It's always been kind of a performance issue in how the team kind of views a player like Arthur Kaliyev. We talk about multiple players that the team kind of doesn't really highlight their best traits. We talked about that on the last podcast. So with Kaliyev, I think it's great to hear that he's ready to move on, start fresh. Jim Hiller said that they're ready to move on in their perspective and start fresh, a clean slate, which is great because Arthur Kaliyev, I mean, there's still a lot of potential in this player. I mean, I feel like we haven't fully seen Arthur Kaliyev be what Arthur Kaliyev can be in the NHL. And if the Kings actually give him the opportunity to showcase what his strengths are, he can be probably a decent high-end middle six player in the NHL. I don't know if he'll ever be like a top-line 40-goal scorer, but you never know. I mean, he's got the shot to do it. So just let Arthur Kaliyev be the Arthur Kaliyev that we know and put him in the situations that he can thrive, whether that's just power play minutes, give him a few minutes here and there, or 5v5. But now you kind of got this new structure and this new play style. I'm curious to see how he's going to fit in.
Yeah, and for me, I just think that if Kaliyev is going to be here opening night, and if he's going to be in the lineup opening night, you got to assume he's going to be on the power play opening night on probably the second unit. So I'm intrigued to see what his usage is there, because that's his skill set, right? Is shooting the puck is his skill set. So I don't know. Like, again, I kind of think we kind of have been down this road with Kaliyev a few different times where like there's talk, he comes in, he had a good camp or a good summer, and then this time it's like they challenge him. I think McClellan's challenged him in the past.
Well, yeah. Sorry, Joe, real quick. Yeah, I remember last year you brought it up. Like they talked about, or McClellan talked about on end about how they challenged him over the summer, and he answered all the challenges. And then he has that suspension, and then it's like, okay, now he's back to the bottom of the barrel.
Right. So I don't know. Like, I get it. New coach, clean slate, fresh slate. I don't know. The comments from they were pretty pointed. Like Blake's comments, I felt in or after the season. Hiller was a little bit more diplomatic, I think, in his answers throughout the end of the season too. But he had zero interest, it seemed, in playing him. I don't know. I will believe that he's got a significant role when I see it. And again, and I've said it before. I said it last night. I'm going to say it again. I'm not saying they're wrong in this case. I think he has to find that consistency and actually earn his keep there and earn that spot, because I also didn't see a ton or see enough. You can make the case as the chicken or the egg that they got to give him the opportunity or vice versa, but I also think he's had opportunities and he showed flashes. We've seen some flashes here and there. We have not seen consistency though. So he's got to own that part. So we'll see. He's had success in a depth role before, though, right?
Yeah.
Him, Blake Lazat, and Brendan Lemieux had a pretty good thing going. In that season, he contributed 5-on-5, and he contributed on the power play. Whether he's playing with Thomas or Turcotte as his centerman, he's going to have a good option at center. I mean, I think, honestly, I think Lemieux is a better fit for him than Lewis. So, however that works, whatever. But he's shown the ability to offer some depth scoring on the fourth line. So we'll see if he's able to do that and carve out some sort of a role. I mean, if he's a fourth line guy, bottom six guy, but he can be effective on the power play, there's something there as long as he can provide value at 5-on-5, which has been inconsistent, I think.
I'm with Trapper9 here. He said, put him with Deneau and Moore. And I've been saying that for the last year and a half or so, because you look at a lot of the numbers and statistics around Kaliyev, yep. All of his best games have come with playing with Deneau and Moore. And I look at the lineup right now and I see Tanner Jeannot in that spot. And I just see it, like, just switch those two. Just switch Kaliyev and Jeannot. Jeannot would be much better playing on the fourth line with Akil Thomas, another younger player, and Trevor Lewis, who kind of help out with a little physicality there. And you have Kaliyev, who's that kind of sniper who can play with the two cone heads and Deneau and Moore, who are always just buzzing around the ice. I wonder if this first look is kind of Jim Hiller saying to Arthur, like, okay, like we're bringing you in with a fresh slate. We're not going to put you in the top 6 because, like Joe said, there's not a lot of room in terms of like lineup battles or whatever open spots in the lineup. But we'll give you that 4th line spot playing on the wing that you've played before and you've kind of excelled at. If you show us a little more, maybe we'll bump you up and get you up in the lineup, maybe playing with the no. Because, like I said, like that's where I've seen the best Arthur Kaliyev.
That line had flashes last year. They were really good, and I'm telling you, I could get excited about, and I know it won't happen. I can get excited, genuinely excited about a Jeannot, Turcotte, Thomas 4th line.
Yeah,
that is a modern day 4th line. You got some youth, you got some speed, you got some skill, you got some physicality. You check off a lot of boxes with that type of a 4th line, and I think that is one I can genuinely get excited about, to be honest with you. So yeah, I mean, again, overall, there's flexibility, and I think that's just something that they didn't have last year that they now have this year. What they do with it, we'll see, right? And you know, there's still a lot of questions. We'll see if we see some different line combinations throughout camp, and when we start to get into some preseason games, if we see some other things. But yeah, I want to be bullish on Kaliyev. Maybe to your point, the system tweak will help him a little bit. I don't know, but this is another one where, you know, part of this has got to be on the player. I think it's funny when Dubois came in and, you know, everybody just hated him from the get-go, and he has to own a lot of the effort. And I just think Kaliyev's similar. I think he's got to own it too, but because he's a Kings draft pick, I feel like he gets a little bit more of a leash from fans, but he needs to own some of this. Like this isn't all, and I've been hard on, as everybody knows, the organization at times with some things. I'm kind of with them there on Kaliyev. I want it, but I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, he didn't lose his spot for like no reason. Like there's performance issues there that need to be addressed, and that's kind of, I'm sure, that's what the team saw. I just don't think it warranted them just like sitting him every game. Like give him a chance to kind of prove himself again. So I wonder if this is that chance.
Yeah, it's the old adage: is opportunity given or is it earned? And I think sometimes one has to come before the other. And with PLD last year, it was like, okay, like he didn't even start the season with a good spot. I mean, he played with Fiala for like 9 games, and they gave up on it. And you know, I think Kaliyev has been given a lot of opportunity. He's earned some of it, and he's also dropped the ball quite a bit when it comes to that. And I don't know if he was just in the organization's doghouse, if it was warranted by fans, because I mean, there were some games where he was visibly bad, but then there were some games where it's like, okay, you're playing him on the 4th line for 4 minutes. You're not using him in the power play where that is his best skill set. That's why you drafted him. He had probably the best shot in that draft. Like you're also not putting him in the best spot to succeed. Like if you're given opportunity to play where your skill set can shine and you're not producing, and that's on you. I think sometimes the organization fumbles that a little bit.
Where are you guys at with this? Like you asked the question, Randon, or had the, you know, maybe it's coach speak, fresh slate, all that stuff. You know, obviously we're not there. We're not in the meetings. We're not in the rooms, all that stuff. Obviously, right? So setting that aside, but we've seen the press conferences. We've seen McClellan talk about it. We've seen Hiller talk about it. We've seen Rob Blake talk about it. We've seen Kaliyev was brought up over and over again toward the end of last season and after the season. I think, Russ, you made a point. He wasn't even a part of the media availability, I don't think.
No, last year.
So it just seemed like this was a breakup inevitably. But now all of a sudden he's back. So is it coach speak? What is your guys' opinion on this, Brandon? I you know, you asked it. What do you, just based on, and this is just a you know, kind of a BS question because none of us know, but just I'm curious to get what you guys think. Do you think this is a fresh slate for Kaliyev and he's going to get a clean look and he's going to get a legit opportunity, or is he going to be out the door at the first opportunity?
I think it's more coach speak than not. And just because I know that they were actively trying to find a spot and they couldn't get anything for him that was what they wanted. So now they're like, okay, well, he's here. Let's make the best of this opportunity. I think it's the exact opposite for Kaliyev, to where he's like, okay, obviously I didn't get any calls that were of any value for the team. I know that. The agent knows that. I'm playing for almost league minimum. Like, this is my last opportunity. So what am I going to do with that? And I think we're going to see a lot of what Kaliyev is made of this year. Like, he doesn't really show a lot of emotion. He always looks like he is upset. Like, it's just the way he comes off. But is he going to take the most of this opportunity? Is he going to be like, hey, whatever they ask me to do, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give 100% every single night. I'm going to try to, do all the things that are necessary to continue earning ice time, because whether it's with the Kings or another organization, he might still want out. He said, but the Kings are my only avenue to get there. So I have to play with this team. I have to play well with this team. And then I can sign a contract anywhere else next off season, or get traded, or be a part of a piece. But I think it's a little bit more coach speak on the organization side, and the clean slate for him is a chance to prove me wrong. And it's all going to be about his mental makeup. There's athletes out there. You look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, says the name of every single receiver that was drafted ahead of him before he gets out on every single practice. That's a major chip, especially for a guy making $30+ million a year. Like, and that type of athlete and that mental makeup, does Kaliyev have something like that to where he's going to make the most of this opportunity and he's going to go out there? Is the organization really going to have a clean slate to where the first sign of failure, they're just going to move on to Turcotte? Are they going to give him an opportunity? I guess we're going to see. The first opportunity is where he's paired on the line. I mean, he could have been, put on a line in Siberia for all, like, that could have happened today. And he was actually given an opportunity with Thomas and Lewis. So it just really depends. I think there's a vibe for both, Joe. And we don't really know. And the Kings have never really been an organization to say what they feel. Like, it's usually only Drew Doughty. So who knows by that? But if I would have to say, to wrap it all up, I would say it's coach speak from the organization. And I think it's fact for Kaliyev that he knows that this is probably his last opportunity to play a real role in the NHL.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an NHL player there. It's just you have to unlock it. And Artie's he's the very reserved guy. Doesn't like talking to the media. I mean, you can just tell media talk is not his thing. Like, he's totally out of his element, which I totally get. Like, nobody needs to, like, we're just there. I feel like, so you don't need to talk to us. But I mean, so I wonder, it's just like, I would love to see them give him an opportunity, because I feel like he still deserves one. Not necessarily like he's ever played himself out of an opportunity, like, fully. Like, there's still a chance here, because I mean, you look at the Kings lineup, they could use a player. Like, if Arthur Kaliyev puts like 15, 20 goals, like, that'd be huge, especially on the power play. So, and I thought he had a few good looks today playing with Keel Thomas, who I love watching, actually, number 26 skate around today. Keel Thomas looked great. So I'm excited to see how he plays. So I think it's a good start. I like hearing stuff like this. We'll see if it turns out to just be coach speak, if they actually give him an opportunity. But I'm glad this feels like a good first step to try to get to the right direction of forming a new relationship between the two.
I feel like, Brandon, like you said, that LA obviously wasn't getting calls. I mean, that's kind of a hint at his perceived value from the rest of the league. I mean, it very much reminds me of the situation in Toronto with Nick Robertson, right? A young player who's kind of sort of had opportunities, but then kind of sort of not really. And, he dragged out all the way through, similar to Kaliyev. He signed shortly before Kaliyev did, but again, he's like, well, it just makes more sense to sign just so I can play, because the only way to get my value up is if I play. It's not, he doesn't have him and Kaliyev, they don't have like a whole lot to hang their hat on at this point that they can say, well, a team's going to want me because of this. All they got is, they don't have much.
And there's nothing for the organization. There's no reason for the organization, right? The organization, he's an RFA. They own his rights.
Yeah.
So what are you going to get? A 6th or a 7th round pick?
Right.
Like, that means nothing for LA.
You're better off with keeping him.
You're better off with keeping him. And so it's like, it's a rock and a hard place situation. But at least he's been given time. I think the situation with Fagemo coming back for that 1 year versus maybe possibly going to Europe and playing, I think that's a different situation. I think you look at Kaliyev has gotten plenty of time in the NHL. And like you said, Russ, we've seen NHL talent from him playing on the power play, him having that 5-on-5 success with Lemieux and Lizotte. I think that, I'll put it this way, the way the team, he's going to force the team's hand, whether how much he plays or not, with what he does. Now, if the team doesn't give him opportunity on the power play, that's the team's fault, and they're kind of that'll be my thought process of like, okay, they don't want him here. They're not allowing him to earn a spot. But I mean, how I don't know if they view Trevor Lewis as an 82 game guy again, but even a line of Kaliyev, Turcotte, and Thomas as the fourth line would be great, you know. And Turcotte and Kaliyev have that, have that camaraderie from the World Juniors and through the AHL, and so maybe that playing with people that you enjoy playing with and have that bond with, maybe that's good enough to go and kind of have that better mental makeup with starting the season out in a different fashion.
And because they don't have a ton of like skill higher in the lineup, he's an easy one to slot into PP2, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Even if you have Clark and Spence, I'm just going to pencil Doughty into one. If they're going to roll with Clark and Spence and give them the opportunity on PP2, there's easily a spot for Kaliyev there, because you don't have to put Fogle there, you don't have to put Laferriere there, right? Like Trevor Moore obviously should be there. I don't need to see Phil Deneau in the power play anymore, to be honest with you, but they are running out of options. Like he's still
got to win faceoffs too.
Yeah. I mean, but given what's available, he's still probably the best bet. I mean, again, I wouldn't mind seeing a guy like Akil Thomas there, but Kaliyev still should fit there. Like if you look at Moore, Kaliyev, Clark, Spence, and then who's your fifth guy? Is it Deneau for the faceoffs? Fine. I mean,
he's top 1 or 2 shot on the team,
right? So I think if you're
opinion,
he's got to be there. I think especially if you've got Clark running things at the top, his ability to create space and draw killers to him and maybe open up Kaliyev. I mean, hey, whether Kaliyev's on the right flank, or we've talked about how I think Kaliyev's can be effective in the bumper. As I'm talking about this, man, I literally just thought of this as I'm kind of picturing it in my mind. Like we've talked about Clark being the guy at the top, right? And Spence being the kind of, if they're together, and Spence being the trigger man on the left. I'll be honest, I can also see like Clark on the left flank. And the reason I say that, put Kaliyev in the bumper so that left flank can be your kind of your playmaker too, because he's going to be the one that's going to make that pass to either he's going to dictate, I'm going to go down low and make the triangle play, down low to say Phil Deneau, back up to Kaliyev in the bumper, or Clark on that left side goes up top to Spence, who can let one rip, or again, Clark, the right shot on the left side, can make that pass. It's an easier pass to the lefty Kaliyev in the bumper. I think there's opportunity there. And then you've got Moore, your 30 goal scorer, on the right-hand side, streaking down kind of like Kempe would do sometimes on that right circle. I think there's something there. I think Kaliyev can play the bumper. He was really good at that in historically. I think there's an opportunity for him to do it there. Obviously, he's had success in the right flank, so I totally understand if they went that route too. But I think there's an avenue there.
I would love to see Jordan Spence be like that one-time option on the, if you're facing the net on the left side, and then you have Kaliyev in the bumper. I think Clark's just better suited along the blue line, quarterbacking and power play. And this is nothing to do because of his high IQ. I think one of the best traits Brant Clark has is his ability to get pucks through. Because with Jordan Spence, I think he's got a great shot. Probably one of the better shots on the team in terms of the defenseman. But with Brant Clark, you watch him play, and I noticed this a ton in the rookie faceoff games. Whenever he has the puck on the blue line, he's never looking to shoot to score. He's always just looking to get the puck through and try to get a stick on it. Like every time he has the puck on the blue line. And I think that's a really underrated trait for a lot of defensemen in the league. We saw Sean Durzi just make a ton of turnovers just by trying to shoot the puck, and it hits a shin pad and there's a shorthanded breakaway the other way. We saw that happen a ton. So with Brant Clark could have that ability on the second power play unit, just get the puck through. You put a big body like maybe, I don't know, like a Byfield or wherever in front. I think you got a real good recipe there for PP2.
Yeah, there's options there. There's options.
Yeah. We talked about it last night with the young guns. How much will they force the hand this season? It's going to be very interesting to see how they force them way up and down the lineup and in the power play, and how much Hiller will allow that to happen, or will it be more of the curmudgeon-y, we got to play our older guys. What were you gonna say, Russ?
Yeah, I was going to touch on it real quick because I think we'll wrap up here, but just a couple of notes. It's so funny. So paying attention to all the physicality that's going on, it just seems like it was like 0-0, like with like, I think it was like a 30-minute session. There was like 10 minutes left. It's like 0-0. No one scored. And a lot of it wasn't really sloppy, but it's like, yeah, it's scrimmage, whatever. And then all of a sudden there's like this kind of like scrum behind the net. There's like 3 or 4 bodies. And out of nowhere, Atu Jamson takes the puck, lacrosse style move, all in one motion, and beats David Riddick. And everybody was just like, what the hell was that? And it caught Riddick off guard. His entire bench didn't even know it went in or what happened. And then all of a sudden, just everybody started standing up like, holy hell, that really happened. So that was just like, I think that just points to a lot of the confidence in Yamson's game to be able to pull that off.
He did it in a game. He did it in a game last season.
Yep, he did it in Liga too. So to see him try that in like a first day of training camp with all the uptick in physicality amongst all these like regular NHL players, and he's in his first real preseason guy, I guess. Well, he was in training camp a couple times, but I thought that was huge. But and then Jim Hiller, he did mention he singled out 2 players that he thought were really good today, and that was Andre Lee and Samuel Hellenius. He thought those 2 players kind of stood out, but he was like, he didn't want to like make too much of it. He's like, hey, 2 other players could stand out tomorrow. Who knows? But I thought it like all in all, like I've been to a couple of these training camps where it's really day one. A lot of it's kind of formality, but man, like there were so many like newsworthy and like really fun things to watch, not only on the ice, but kind of get a glimpse of from a lot of the players and the coaching staff. So, I mean, Kings fans, if you guys are got nothing going on this weekend, there's training camps that are there. They're going on this, I think, Saturday and Sunday. So go head over to El Segundo and catch practice.
I think it's funny. We talked about the Michigan and how everybody was excited. I don't know if you saw it. Mitchkoff tried the Michigan at Flyers practice, and then there were some tweets like, "Oh, Tortorella just called ICP to get him shipped back to Russia." Like,
I should have asked Hiller about the goal and got his back. Like old Tortorella about it, but yeah, that was unreal.
So, well, yeah, go and check out the training camp. It's new vibes, good vibes to start the season. Thank you for my co-host for coming on tonight. Tomorrow we will be going live again. I don't know who's going to be on, but we're going to be on with Sinbin Vegas to talk about the crossover, about how the Golden Knights look for this season, what to expect from them in the Pacific Division. You find all of our articles at hockeyroyalty.com. Follow us at hockey_royalty, at Randall Commando 24, at NHL Russell, JW Paterino for all your rain coverage. Kopitar 4HOF. Don't forget our DraftKings code is THPN, and this podcast is sponsored by Betterhelp. Boys, new season is upon us. Thank you for coming on tonight. Thank you guys for being in the chat. We appreciate you guys, our fans out there. And as always on this podcast, go Kings go.